طرف نقطه سیومش هم گفتم آرام آرام پیش شوم. سلام علیکم. امی چه ده بابا جون نگفتم گروپا یزو چی کرد؟ مامورم تحقیق کنی چی کرده؟ سلام علیکم.
از دشمن از بگو
22 58 هم از دشمن از بگو
22 58 و 23 8 از دشمن است.
Two North Africans, with Belgian passports and a letter of introduction from an Islamic group in London, persuaded Massoud to give them an interview. They began with some unexpected questions. Why are you against Osama bin Laden? Why do you call him a killer? Each exploded a bomb, one in the camera and the other in a suicide belt. Massoud was dead.
شاید من اولین نفراتی بودم در دنیا که از موضوع مطلع می شدم. پرسش مهم این که چرا احمد شاه مسعود این گونه ترور شده و چرا اصلا ترور شده در این مقطع، چه اتفاقی افتاده که دو نفر جان خودشون از دست دادن، دو نفر نیروی حرفی.
Iranian intelligence judged that only Al-Qaeda could have pulled off this complex hit. One obvious motive was to help their hosts, the Taliban. But it smelt of an international plot.
فکر می‌کردیم که آنچه که اتفاق افتاده پایان یک ماجرا نیست، آغاز یک ماجراست و فکر می‌کردیم که اتفاقات بیشتری در پیشه.
Massoud's other ally also smelled a rat.
Мы с президентом Бушем говорили, и я в разговоре с ним упомянул о том, что на днях был убит лидер Северного альянса в Афганистане Масуд. И я сказал тогда американскому коллеге, знаешь, меня это очень тревожит, такое чувство, что что-то должно произойти. Они явно к чему-то готовятся.
The next day was the 11th of September, 2001.
Today, jury selection begins in a critical phase of the trial of Andrea Yates, accused of drowning her 5 children. Plus, superstar Michael Jordan in the news, the strongest words yet from Jordan, that he will be back. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Michael may be back. He's saying that tendonitis.
It was 8:46 in the morning. That's when this stopped even resembling a normal day.
Right then and there, I knew that this was going to be the worst day of my life as a firefighter.
Just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at the World Trade Center in New York City. One report said, and we can't confirm any of this, that a plane may have hit one of the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. But again, you're seeing the live pictures here. We have no further details than that. We don't know anything about what they have concluded happened there this morning.
ABC's Don Dahler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
It appears that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building, and as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
We just saw another plane coming in from the side. So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway.
Give him that. You can watch. You can film it.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
That is the courtyard of the Pentagon. The Pentagon is indeed exactly what it's described, just on the other side of the Potomac River from the Capitol, and there you see fires burning in the courtyard of the Pentagon, confirming what we'd been told almost immediately by eyewitnesses.
The Pentagon itself has caved in from the top. There is much fire coming out of the windows. It looks like something from World War II, Peter.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way!
Let's go to the trade tower again, because we now have what do we have? We don't. It may be that something fell off the building.
Peter, it's Don Dahler down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. Started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have, And I'm just going to add to the chaos and the trauma of the day by saying that a large plane has now crashed about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh.
Peter, it crashed in an open field. All that you really see there is a huge crater. You can't even see it very well from our vantage point. A huge black gaping hole, as investigators are describing it. No survivors, Peter.
Oh my God.
The second tower.
It's hard to put it into words, and maybe one doesn't need to. Both those towers have now gone. The landscape of New York City has just been changed, and one has to assume that thousands of lives have been extinguished. Good Lord, it just... This scene on the steps of the Capitol building tonight, just as the sun was going down, was very, very moving.
From the mountains to the prairie, to the ocean, wide before. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
On September the 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country. Americans have known wars, but for the past 136 years, they have been wars on foreign soil, except for one Sunday in 1941. Americans have known the casualties of war, but not at the center of a great city on a peaceful morning. Americans have known surprise attacks, but never before on thousands of civilians. All of this was brought upon us in a single day, and night fell on a different world, a world where freedom itself is under attack. Americans have many questions tonight. Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. They are some of the murderers indicted for bombing American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya and responsible for bombing the USS Cole. Al-Qaeda is to terror what the mafia is to crime, but its goal is not making money. Its goal is remaking the world and imposing its radical beliefs on people everywhere. The terrorists practice a fringe form of Islamic extremism that has been rejected by Muslim scholars and the vast majority of Muslim clerics, a fringe movement that perverts the peaceful teaching of Islam. The terrorist directive commands them to kill Christians and Jews, to kill all Americans, and make no distinctions among military and civilians, including women and children. This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden, are linked to many other organizations in different countries, including the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. There are thousands of these terrorists in more than 60 countries. They are recruited from their own nations and neighborhoods and brought to camps in places like Afghanistan, where they are trained in the tactics of terror. They are sent back to their homes or sent to hide in countries around the world to plot evil and destruction. The leadership of Al-Qaeda has great influence in Afghanistan and supports the Taliban regime in controlling most of that country. In Afghanistan, we see Al-Qaeda's vision for the world. Afghanistan's people have been brutalized. Many are starving, and many have fled. Women are not allowed to attend school. You can be jailed for owning a television. Religion can be practiced only as their leaders dictate. A man can be jailed in Afghanistan if his beard is not long enough. The United States respects the people of Afghanistan. Tonight, the United States of America makes the following demands on the Taliban. Deliver to United States authorities all the leaders of Al-Qaeda who hide in your land. Release all foreign nationals, including American citizens you have unjustly imprisoned. Protect foreign journalists, diplomats, and aid workers in your country. Close immediately and permanently every terrorist training camp in Afghanistan and hand over every terrorist and every person in their support structure to appropriate authorities. Give the United States full access to terrorist training camps so we can make sure they are no longer operating. These demands are not open to negotiation or discussion. Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists. From this day forward, any nation that continues to harbor or support terrorism will be regarded by the United States as a hostile regime. More than 2 weeks ago, I gave Taliban leaders a series of clear and specific demands. None of these demands were met. And now, the Taliban will pay a price.
At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld announces the shooting war against terrorism is on.
The only way to deal with these terrorist threats is to go at them where they exist.
The targets, the Taliban military, air defense systems, command and control bunkers, airfields and warplanes around Kabul, Jalalabad, and Kandahar.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
To drive home the point, this is not an attack against Afghanistan or its people. Today's strikes ended with an airdrop of food, 35,000 packets, to starving Afghan refugees.
And if there was any doubt about the role of Osama bin Laden in the September 11th attacks, his threats to America tonight were a chilling reminder of his hatred.
I swear by God, by Allah, He who has raised the sky, that the United States will not have peace.
The battle is now joined on many fronts. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail.
The fact is, in this battle against terrorism, there is no silver bullet. There is no single thing that is going to suddenly make that threat disappear.
With my signature, this law will give intelligence and law enforcement officials important new tools to fight a present danger. I appreciate their efforts and bipartisanship in passing this new law. The terrorists cannot be reasoned with. Witness the recent anthrax attacks through our postal service.
Attorney General John Ashcroft absolutely loves it. He said, the hour this thing is signed, I'm going to instruct law enforcement how to use these new powers. Some of them are being able to trace email messages from place to place, making it easier to surveil people for terrorist purposes, for intelligence purposes. One of the interesting things I think we're going to see that will immediately affect this investigation is the sharing of information between the intelligence gatherers, the CIA, the NSA, and other places, and the FBI. What they've done is they've lowered the wall between the two, which means, for example, as one high-level Justice Department person said yesterday, we have files. The intelligence people have files that they are ready to hand over to the criminal people. What that means is they can take that, and suddenly they have a lot of new leads.
This is a two-front war. It's a two-front war. And it's a war we're going to win on both fronts. But make no mistake, the best way to make sure we protect our homeland is to succeed by bringing the terrorists abroad who try to strike us to justice.
یه نمادی سال پیش شمشاد خودم میرم حالا در پیش چی هستم ایجاد بازار هستم از اینجا برم 45 یورو ببینم شمشاد میبینم مشکل کل حل میکنم خاطر تو بخی جمع
Welcome to war-torn Afghanistan. Right now we're at a place called Tarnak Farms, which was a place not too far away from Kandahar Airport where we're based. And it was held by Al-Qaeda not more than 2 months ago. We bombed the heck out of them, so they left. Right now, today, we brought some of the ordnance that we found that used to belong to the Taliban. We're going to blow it up, so it will never be a danger to us or anybody else. More to come from Kandahar. We're going to go. Roger. Nice one. All clear.
In 2001, just 10 weeks after 9/11, he was a 37-year-old Army major leading a team of America's most elite commandos. Even now, we can't tell you his name or show you his face. We hired a theatrical makeup artist to take the former Delta officer through a series of transformations to create the man you see now. He calls himself Dalton Fury.
We'll smoke him out of his cave, and we'll get him eventually.
But the administration's strategy was to let Afghans do most of the fighting. Using radio intercepts and other intelligence, the CIA pinpointed bin Laden in the mountains near the border of Pakistan. Following the strategy of keeping an Afghan face on the war, Fury's Delta team joined the CIA and Afghan fighters and piled into pickup trucks. They videotaped their journey to a place called Tora Bora. Fury told us his orders were to kill bin Laden and leave the body with the Afghans. Delta developed an audacious plan to come at bin Laden from the one direction he would never expect.
We want to come in on the back door.
You were going to come up over the tops of the peaks?
That's right. The original plan that we sent up to our higher headquarters, Delta Force wants to come in over the mountain with oxygen, coming from the Pakistan side, over the mountains and come in and get a drop on bin Laden from behind.
Why didn't you do that?
Disapproved at some level above us.
Fury wasn't happy about it, but he pressed on with the only option he had left, a frontal assault on bin Laden's dug-in al-Qaeda fighters. The Delta team had only about 50 men, so the mission would depend on the Afghan militia as guides and muscle. This is video of the top-secret mission never seen by the public before. It was recorded by the Delta commandos themselves. Dressed like Afghans, the Americans maneuvered up the mountains, calling in airstrikes on al-Qaeda. By day they would advance, but at night they soon discovered that their Afghan allies went home.
Well, I have to assume that if you started up the hills of Tora Bora and the Mujahideen took territory, they didn't abandon that at night.
Oh, yes, they did.
They gave it up to the enemy?
Absolutely. The Mujahideen would go up, get into a skirmish, a firefight, lose a guy or two, maybe kill an al-Qaeda guy or two, and then they leave.
Fury had two choices: advance his small team with no Afghan support, or return to camp and assault in the morning. He was under orders to make the Afghans take the lead, and intelligence said there were more than 1,000 hardened fighters protecting bin Laden. The radio intercepts gave Delta a fix on bin Laden's location, and one of the Delta soldiers narrated his own video.
This top hill, very top up there,
That's supposedly where bin Laden's hanging out. We've seen movement along this saddle right here. We don't know if it's friendly or not, so we haven't been able to call fire on it.
And then something extraordinary happened. Fury's Afghan allies announced that they had negotiated a ceasefire with al-Qaeda, something the Americans had no interest in. When Fury's team advanced anyway, his Afghan partners drew their weapons on Delta. It took 12 hours to end the bogus ceasefire, precious time for al-Qaeda to move. Bin Laden had changed direction and the tone of his radio calls.
Clearly under duress, clearly hurting. They called up every available bomber in the air, took control of the airspace, and they dropped several hours of bombs on the cave he went into. We believe, it was our opinion at the time, that he died inside that cave.
Bin Laden's radio went silent, and Dalton Fury believed that the bombs had killed him. In October 2004, Bin Laden released a message, and Fury knew that his team had failed.
And once we finally do grab Osama bin Laden, I think the fact that we lost him in Tora Bora will move out of my memory, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to those days.
The fall of Kabul in 2001 was greeted with jubilation, the momentum then with the U.S. But reluctant to commit its own troops, the U.S. allowed Osama bin Laden to escape from the Tora Bora mountains. Then what many here see as the gravest error of all.
Afghans were wary as the U.S. turned its attention to invading Iraq, and they were right. Everything from reconstruction and aid to the fight itself suffered as the U.S. shifted its resources and its focus away from Afghanistan and the commitment it had made to the Afghan people.
That lost opportunity has led the U.S. into a fight that would have been unimaginable 8 years ago when the Taliban collapsed in disarray. Back then, valleys like this in northeastern Afghanistan were peaceful. The U.S., believing their enemy was defeated, put few military assets on the ground. Another grave mistake. Now even the most remote mountains are killing grounds for determined Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters. No longer afraid to stand and fight whenever they choose.
Go! Come on, come on, come on!
The fighters it faced became proficient in small unit tactics, which they learned from studying U.S. troops. That can be seen in this Taliban propaganda video, which shows how the Taliban execute an attack on a small U.S. combat outpost. Loaded with ammunition, Taliban fighters climbed to the highest reaches of these mountains. They began their assault before first light, using the type of overwhelming fire usually used against them by the U.S. Their commander is so certain of victory that he orders his fighters to open fire on the jets when U.S. air support is called in. Taliban, stay in your places, he commands. If the jet comes down again, shoot the wings. With a huge fire raging, the Taliban wait for survivors to stumble out. 12 Afghan soldiers captured, 3 U.S. Marines killed. The U.S. counterattacked, and 3 days later the abandoned post was recaptured. But forcing an American withdrawal was a victory for the Taliban, a sign of how far they've come since the U.S. thought they were defeated.
Defeat is a very strong word. Will you ever defeat an insurgency in total?
Will you?
Well, it's challenging. I think you got to get it to a moderate level of chaos, a level that's accepted.